Do you think the Middle Ages were a time of knights, ballads, and lofty love? Think again. This is a story about a person whose job is to kiss, but his lips are not a promise of passion or a symbol of salvation. They are the last hope for the dying and the lost, a desperate ritual on the border between life and death. Welcome to a reality where dirt eats into your skin, hope rots along with the roof, and survival isn't a feat, but a daily, meaningless habit. No one here waits for miracles. Even kisses aren't about love, they are about the tired, desperate struggle against the inevitable end. But before you settle in, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, which city are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now, get comfortable. We're about to begin. The first light of dawn barely filters through the tiny window, which only offers a sliver of the sky. The room smells of stale sweat, damp, and the faint rot of food left out too long. The floor beneath you is uneven, the wood warped by years of moisture, and the bed, it's barely a bed at all. There's no mattress, just a collection of tattered straw and filthy rags that have long since lost in any trace of softness. You can hear the soft rustling of the others around you, their bodies shifting as they too wake, grumbling and groaning as they begin to stir. A heavy silence settles in the room, broken only by the occasional cough or the creaking of a floorboard. It's a sound you've learned to ignore, part of the symphony of misery that fills the air every day. You'd try to stretch, but there's not enough space, not enough comfort, and so you remain still, your body aching from the previous day's toil. The walls of the room are blackened with age, their surfaces damp to the touch. There are no windows to the outside world, just that single slit in the wood where light fights to get through. The only thing that's kept you from truly suffocating in here is the small crack in the door that lets in a draft. You take a deep breath, but even the air tastes sour. You've woken to another day, just like the last, and the one before that. The air is thick with the promise of hard labor and the promise of nothing else. It's been so long since you thought about anything beyond survival. You know what the world outside looks like. It's a blur of mud and hardship, a handful of villages, some rich, some poor, all ruled by the same unspoken laws: hunger, fear, and disease. But today, like every other, you have your work to do. It isn't much, and it certainly isn't glamorous. You are a master of kisses, a title that once might have had some romantic or magical flair to it, but not anymore. Now, it is nothing more than a necessity, a grim occupation that ensures you remain useful in a world where being useful means staying alive. The villagers come to you not out of affection, but out of desperation. You've been trained in the art of healing through touch, but not the gentle, caring touch one might imagine. No, the touch you've learned is harsh, clinical. You have become the instrument that might save them from diseases they don't understand. But it's also the instrument that serves as a constant reminder of the sickness in their souls, in their bodies, in their lives. The villagers don't really care about your feelings. They don't care about your personal anguish, your exhaustion, your growing fear that you may be losing yourself. You are a tool, a mechanism for their survival. You take the bruised, desperate lips of the sick, the dying, the broken, and you give them a kiss. It's not a kiss of love, it's a kiss of necessity. Your lips against theirs, your breath mingling with their fevered air. It's nothing more than a transaction. The morning stretches long ahead of you. You will go out into the village, find those who are ill, and kiss them, transferring your energy, your warmth, your life, hoping that something in your touch will keep them alive. Perhaps your touch will be enough. Perhaps it won't. Either way, it will be a long day. The work is draining, and each kiss feels heavier than the last. You've kissed more bodies than you care to remember, and with it each one, you feel something inside you slipping away. But what else can you do? You're not allowed the luxury of weakness. You are not allowed the comfort of escape. Every day is the same, and every day you know that you will face the same horrible, necessary task. It is what you are. You stand up, your joints aching, and move to the cracked wooden chest at the end of your bed. You pull on your worn tunic, the fabric frayed at the edges, the stitching coming undone in places. It's cold outside, but it doesn't matter. The chill won't matter much once you're out there, in the village, in the thick of it all. The work demands that you give it all you have, and in return, it takes even more. There is no room for hesitation, for doubt. You've learned that much. You leave the room, stepping into the dim hallway. The smell of damp earth and sweat seems to follow you, as if it is attached to your very skin. The others in the house stir, but no one speaks. No one has the energy to speak. It is enough to simply exist, and not even that is guaranteed. The world outside is harsh, unforgiving, and it will take what little you have left if you let it. As you step into the village, you see the same faces you see every day, the same tired eyes, the same empty stares. The villagers don't look up when you pass. They don't offer you a smile, a greeting, or any sign of recognition. You are nothing more than another figure in the landscape of despair, another body in a sea of misery. You walk to your first appointment of the day. It's a house at the far end of the village, a small, decrepit hut where a woman lies sick in bed, her body racked with fever. Her eyes flutter open when you enter, and she reaches out, her hands trembling. Please, she whispers, help me. You nod, stepping forward, the kiss, the transaction, the ritual. You close your eyes, press your lips to hers, and for a brief moment, you forget where you are. You forget who you are. All that exists is the touch, the kiss. But it's not enough. Her body remains cold, and her breath is shallow. You pull away, and she stares at you with vacant eyes. Will I live? She asks, her voice barely a whisper. You don't have the answer. You hear it before you see it. The weight of bodies, the tired shuffle of feet, the familiar groan of ancient timber complaining beneath too many burdens. It is a sound that is not so much heard as absorbed, stitched into your bones, along with the chill and the ache and the thin hope that never quite dies, but never quite lives either. The other inhabitants of this hovel are waking up now, rising from their nests of soiled rags and flea bitten blankets. There are 5 of you who share this miserable room: yourself, 2 old men with lungs as rattly as a smith's bellows, a girl who no longer speaks, and an old woman who might have once been beautiful, but now looks as though the world has sanded her down to nothing but bitterness and sharp elbows. In this place, you do not know each other's names. Names are luxuries. Instead, you are known by the noises you make, by the smell of your breath, by the rhythm of your coughing. No one greets you, no one smiles. It is too early for that. And besides, what would there be to smile about? You all know what is coming. Another day that promises only exhaustion, disappointment, and the faint possibility of survival. You scrape your nails across your scalp, feeling the grit, the dried sweat, the small scabs. You wonder if lice are the reason you dream of crawling things, or if perhaps it is only the natural condition of your life, always waiting for something to bite. The girl, thin as a reed, sits up. She pulls her knees to her chest and rocks, her eyes huge and unblinking. She will not look at you. You gave her a kiss last week when her skin was burning, and now she seems to exist in another world, somewhere between here and not here. You hope she will last another day. You do not think she will. You push yourself to your feet, feeling the familiar agony in your joints, the stiff way your back refuses to straighten, as if your very skeleton remembers how much it hates being here. You move carefully, not out of courtesy to your roommates, but to avoid provoking the rats that nest beneath the floorboards. You hear them sometimes, a midnight scrabble, a tiny squeal. They are part of this world as much as you are. You dress in silence. Your clothes are little more than shreds, an ancient tunic patched with bits of sackcloth, trousers whose knees have become permanent doors to your skin, a pair of boots that no longer keep the damp out. The others do the same. The old woman spits on the floor. One of the men begins to cough, a dry, hacking sound that lasts for a full minute. When it finally ends, he looks at you, eyes red rimmed, and mutters something you cannot understand. You shuffle to the door, push it open, and step out into the corridor. Here, the smell changes, a little less human, a little more mold and rot. The walls sweat in the cold, the stones glisten with damp. You pass the rooms of others, each one as full of misery as your own, and make your way to the stairs. Downstairs, the kitchen is already alive with activity. The landlord's wife is banging pots together, yelling at her son for stealing the heel of yesterday's bread. You keep your head down and make your way outside. You do not want to see the landlord. He is the sort of man who expects gratitude for not beating you every morning, and today you do not feel like pretending to be grateful. The village greets you as it always does: mud, mud, and more mud. In summer, the streets are rivers of filth. In winter, they freeze solid, and you learn new ways to slip and fall. There is a single well in the center, guarded by a woman who collects a handful of grain from anyone who wants water. She eyes you with suspicion, but you have nothing to give, and she knows better than to argue. After all, you are the master of kisses. You hate that title. Once, when you were a child, you thought it meant something. Now, it feels like a cruel joke. There is no romance in it, no magic. Your lips are cracked, your breath sour, your body always aching. People look at you with a mix of fear and hope, as if you are some kind of dark priest or condemned criminal. Today, you have 3 appointments, 3 houses at the edge of the village, 3 sick bodies waiting for your touch. You wonder, not for the first time, if your visits are a blessing or a curse. You wonder, too, if any of them will be alive by tomorrow. You start with the house closest to the woods. It is a wattle and daub hut, barely holding itself together. You knock and wait. A moment later, a boy opens the door. He cannot be more than 8, but his face is already hollow, his eyes serious. He does not speak. He only leads you inside to where his mother lies on a bed of straw, her face pale, her lips blue. You do not hesitate. You kneel beside her, feeling the damp earth beneath your knees, and take her hand. Her skin is cold. Her breath rattles in her chest. You lean in, press your mouth to hers, feel the fever, the sickness, the faintest flicker of life. You hold the kiss, not out of love, not even out of duty, but because you know that if you do not do this, she will die, and even if you do, she might die anyway. When you pull away, she is still breathing, but her eyes have closed. The boy watches you with silent accusation. You do not speak. What could you say? That you have done your best? That sometimes your best is not enough? Instead, you stand, brush the dirt from your knees, and leave. Outside, the day is gray and cold. The wind cuts through your clothes, finds every gap, every weakness. You shiver, but you keep moving. You cannot afford to stop. Not here, not now. Your second appointment is an old man who has lived too long. He remembers a time before the wars, before the famine, before the sickness. He remembers when the world was less cruel, or perhaps he only thinks he does. His room smells of urine and despair. You kiss him, and he weeps, and you feel his tears on your cheek as you pull away. The third is a child, a girl with hair the color of ash. She is too weak to sit up, too tired to cry. You kiss her gently, as if gentleness could make a difference. When you finish, her mother thanks you, but her eyes are empty. She knows, as you do, that hope is just another word for disappointment. By the time you return to your own hovel, the sun is already low in the sky. You are exhausted. Your lips sting. Your hands shake. You crawl into your corner, pull the rags over your head and try not to think. The floor creaks again as your companions settle in for the night. The girl rocks in silence. The old men cough. The old woman mutters curses to the darkness. Another day has ended. You have survived for now, and you know, as surely as you know the taste of sickness, that tomorrow will be the same. The title hovers above your head like a rotten crown, bestowing on you the sort of respect that smells faintly of dread. In the village, your reputation has outgrown your shadow. People do not call you by name anymore. They whisper instead, "There goes the master of kisses," they say, as if invoking your presence might cause boils to erupt or rats to swarm the streets. They call for you only when hope has curdled and the local herbs have done nothing but stain the linen. Your occupation is not a trade you chose. It is more like a curse passed down, or a penance for something you cannot remember doing. Once, when you were younger, there were stories of healing, of miracles, of soft hands and gentle words. You do not remember the stories now, only the shape of them, the way they clung to the walls of your childhood home. Your mother, her voice raw from singing you to sleep, taught you that sometimes the body can be fooled by touch, that sometimes illness can be outwitted by love, or at least by the pretense of it. But nothing in your life has ever been soft. No matter how many lips you press your own to, no matter how much hope you let flicker in a desperate gaze, the sickness lingers. Disease does not care for rituals, for magic, for the trembling faith of the dying. It moves through the village like smoke, silent, invisible, choking out the laughter and painting every face with the same gray resignation. You have learned to recognize the sick by their eyes. Healthy people look past you, through you, as though afraid that one day they might need you. But the sick, oh, the sick, they meet your gaze as if you hold the last crumb of bread in a world of hunger. Some cry before you even touch them. Others laugh, a wild, cracked laugh that stinks of terror and surrender. None of them thank you, not really, not anymore. Your routine is as rigid as the iron at the blacksmith's forge. Each morning, you trudge through the mud and the stink, visiting the same houses, performing the same gestures, feeling the same slow drain inside yourself. You bring nothing with you. There is no medicine in your hands, no blessing in your words. Only the press of your mouth on fevered skin, the ancient ritual that binds you to these people and to your own fate. Today, you make your way to the edge of the village, to a house barely standing, its roof patched with moss and its walls lusting like an old drunk. Inside, a woman sits beside the fire, her eyes hollow, her arms wrapped around a bundle of rags. When she looks up, her face crumples with a mixture of hope and horror. "My boy," she whispers, "he will not wake." You kneel beside the bundle and peel back the rags. A boy, no older than 5, lies pale and still, his lips dry, his skin stretched tight over small bones. You know, even before you touch him, that he is too far gone. You know it, and yet you go through the motions. You lean in, your mouth brushing his forehead, his cheeks, finally his tiny mouth. The taste of fever is sharp and metallic, like old pennies on your tongue. For a moment, you let yourself believe. You imagine the old tales of life restored, of death denied. You hold that fantasy close, if only to keep your own soul from curdling. But when you pull away, the boy is unchanged. His chest does not rise, his eyes do not open. You rise, and the mother clings to your arm, her nails biting through your sleeve. She begs, she pleads, she offers you the only coin she owns, a bent copper with the king's face worn away. You do not take it. What would you do with money here, in a place where even the baker cannot be bribed for bread? You murmur an apology, some phrase you have learned to say so often it has lost all meaning. He is at peace now, you tell her, though the words taste sour. The mother's howling follows you out the door, mingling with the cawing of crows in the distant trees. This is your legacy, a procession of sorrows, a trail of grief that winds through every hut and every heart. Sometimes you dream of running. You imagine slipping away in the night, disappearing into the forest, starting anew somewhere no one knows your face or your cursed lips. But dreams are for those who believe in escape, and you are not one of them. Back in the village square, the blacksmith waves you over. He is a giant of a man, his arms thick as tree limbs, his beard tangled with yesterday's soot. My wife, he says, she cannot rise from her bed. His eyes, for all their size, are small and frightened. You nod, and he leads you inside. The blacksmith's home is marginally better than most. At least the walls are straight, and the air does not taste entirely of rot. His wife lies swaddled in blankets, her hair plastered to her forehead, her eyes darting between you and her husband. You perform your ritual again, lips pressed to brow, to cheek, to mouth. You feel her tremble beneath your touch, whether from fear or hope or fever, you cannot say. When you pull away, she whispers, a thank you. It is almost enough to make you weep, but you have learned to swallow your tears. You step back into the square. The world is unchanged, the mud is deeper, the sky is a colorless smear. Your tongue feels heavy, your lips raw. You have kissed the sick and the dying. You have offered comfort where there is none to be had. Still, you continue, because that is what you do. That is all you have left. Tomorrow, you know, the village will call for you again, and you, master of kisses, will answer, because in this world, no one escapes their role, not even you. You have known it since your earliest memory, long before you understood what disease was, long before you could give it a name. The air itself feels thick, tainted with something you cannot see, but always sense, a heaviness that settles on your tongue and makes every breath feel like a risk. There are days when the village seems to be rotting from the inside out, and you suspect that it is not only the bodies, but the very soul of the place that is infected. Here, You are not a healer in the noble sense. There is no talk of remedies, no knowledge of herbs beyond the simplest teas the old women brew from whatever weeds they can pull from the mud. The apothecary, such as he is, deals in superstition more than science, selling vials of colored water and promising relief that never comes. Real medicine is a fantasy, the sort of thing rich men in distant cities might boast of. But for your world, there is only endurance. The streets are your constant tormentors. Every morning, you step outside and are greeted by the same sights: gutters overflowing with refuse, the husks of rats, the twisted shapes of dogs too weak to drag themselves away from the filth. Children dart barefoot between puddles that never quite dry, their laughter sharp and brittle as glass. They cough behind their hands, or do not bother to hide it at all. You hear them hacking at night, a chorus of lungs that never seem to rest. You have learned to recognize the stages of sickness. It starts with a pallor, a dryness at the lips, a slow fade from the eyes. Then comes the fever, or the rash, or the swollen joints, or all of it at once. Sometimes the sickness is merciful, quick as a snapped neck. More often, it drags itself out, stringing along hope like a cruel joke until the sick are nothing but bones and sorrow. You remember, distantly, a time when someone believed in healing. Perhaps it was your mother, or perhaps it was someone from a dream. You remember someone saying that love could cure, that tenderness could ward off death, but you have never seen it, not in this place, not in this time. Here, disease is as common as bread, though bread itself is not so common. Today, as you move through the streets, you are more acutely aware than usual of the rot in the air. Someone has died recently, and the news moves through the village like the sound of a cracked bell. The neighbors mutter behind their hands, crossing themselves or touching the small tokens of faith strung around their necks. You do not bother. You know that faith does not slow the spread, nor do prayers hold back the tide. You are stopped by a woman whose hands are raw from scrubbing at stains that will not wash away. She begs you to come quickly to help her daughter. You follow her to a shack barely bigger than a stable, and inside is a girl of perhaps 12, shaking beneath a thin blanket. Her skin is slick with sweat, and her lips are split from fever. The mother asks, her voice breaking, if you can save her. You do what you always do. You kneel beside the girl, feeling the straw prick through your worn trousers, and press your lips to her brow, her cheeks, her trembling mouth. The kiss is not an act of passion or even kindness. It is more like a desperate negotiation with fate. You feel the heat pouring from her, the way her small hand clutches yours. When it is over, you pull away. The mother searches your face for any sign, any hint that you have worked a miracle. You have nothing to offer her but a tired shrug. Outside, the city carries on. Someone has started a fire to burn a pile of spoiled food, and the smell drifts through the air, mingling with the odor of unwashed bodies and the sickly sweetness of decay. You watch as a pair of children try to catch a pigeon with a loop of string. They laugh when it escapes, but their laughter is edged with something you recognize, the knowledge that nothing good stays for long. You pass by the church, where the priest stands in the doorway, his eyes narrow as he watches you approach. He says nothing. He has prayed over too many graves, dug too shallow to waste more words. He watches you, and you watch him, and between the two of you is an ocean of unspoken defeat. Back in the market square, you see the butcher arguing with a woman over the price of offal. She waves a coin at him, but he turns away, his face set like stone. Even here, even among the living, the disease has its grip. The butcher's hands tremble when he lifts the cleaver, and you notice the bruises blooming along his arms. You wonder, in a detached way, whether you will be summoned to his house soon, whether you will press your lips to his feverish skin and feel the weight of another life slipping through your fingers. The sun never seems to rise all the way. The sky remains a dull, exhausted gray, and you wonder if it is the same everywhere, or if somewhere beyond the horizon there are places where the air smells of grass and clean water. You doubt it. You doubt there is anywhere in the world untouched by the slow, patient rot. You finish your rounds as you always do. No thanks, no pay, only the knowledge that for one more day you have done what was asked of you. You trudge home through the mud, your feet numb, your lips burning, your body aching in ways you have learned not to name. The city is saturated with disease, and you are one of its many, many symptoms. Tomorrow, you know, there will be more kisses, more hope, more death. Hope is a currency so thin it might as well be smoke, but it is all the peasants have. They come, shuffling through mud, trailing their sick children or carrying them in their arms, desperate to believe in something, anything that might stave off the inevitable. Your room becomes a crossroads for sorrow. Sometimes, when you close your eyes at night, you swear you can hear the sound of all those feet, trudging endlessly through dirt and disappointment, always heading for your door. There is no privacy here, not really. When peasants enter, they do not knock. Sometimes they do not even speak, simply place their suffering before you like an offering. A boy, flushed with fever, coughing up phlegm as his mother weeps silently. An old woman whose joints have swollen like overripe fruit, her face creased with pain. A father, his hands trembling, carrying a daughter who does not move except for the shallow flutter of her breath. You have seen every variety of sickness, the spotted fevers that peel skin away in sheets, the wasting disease that hollows out cheeks and darkens the eyes, the quick death, which is not quick at all, but stretches out for days, a slow unraveling. The illnesses no one bothers to name because everyone knows what comes next. You know these faces, these symptoms, as intimately as your own. The ritual is always the same. You take the sick into your arms, pressing your lips to hot skin, to trembling mouths. Sometimes, In the brief moment of contact, you feel a flicker of gratitude or hope in the other person. More often, it is just fear. You are not sure which is worse. When you were a child, you thought there was a secret to it, something magical in the way your mother would hold you when you were sick, the way she whispered songs against your fevered brow. Now you know better. Now you know that most things in life are less about magic and more about desperation. There is nothing mystical in the touch of your lips. There is only the need to do something, anything, rather than sit and watch a loved one die. Sometimes a patient recovers. You cannot say why. Sometimes a child wakes the next day with clear eyes and a normal color to their skin. Their parents will thank you, will offer you a crust of bread or a handful of beans, will praise your name around the village for weeks. But for every miracle, there are 10 failures, and the failures haunt you. You remember the faces of the ones who did not wake, the ones who slipped away quietly in the night, their breath growing softer until it stopped altogether. Your neighbors think you are protected, that your work grants you a special immunity. They are wrong. Every time you press your lips to another's fever, you feel your own strength falter. Your body aches constantly. Your own cough never truly leaves. You know it is only a matter of time before the sicknesses you have gathered finally claim you as well. One morning, a woman arrives, clutching her infant to her chest. The child is limp, its tiny head lolling against her shoulder. Her eyes are wild, rimmed with red. She thrusts the baby into your arms, begging you to save it. The child is barely breathing, its skin a color you cannot name. You go through the motions, kiss the baby's brow, murmur empty words, hope for something to happen. Nothing does. The mother does not leave. She stays in your doorway for hours, rocking back and forth, refusing to accept what you already know. That night, she finally carries the child away, silent as a shadow. Another day, a man drags himself into your room, his leg swollen and red, his breath wheezing. He has heard the stories. Some say your kiss can draw poison from wounds, that you can charm death itself if you try hard enough. He insists you help him, offers you the last coin he owns. You kneel, do as he asks, but even as your lips touch his skin, you know it is useless. Infection has set in deep, a black rot moving up his flesh. The next day, he is dead, and the coin he offered is found by a rat in the corner. There are times when you want to stop. You imagine refusing the next supplicant, closing your door, turning away from the endless river of suffering. But you do not. You cannot. Their hope is all they have, and without it, what would become of them? What would become of you? You have no illusions left. You do not believe your kisses save lives. If they do, it is luck, not skill. You are not a miracle worker. You are only someone who tries again and again, because to do nothing would be worse. Each day you tell yourself it is enough simply to try, and most days it almost is. At night, as you lie in your corner, and listen to the ragged breathing of your housemates. You wonder if anyone will be left in the morning. The darkness settles around you, thick as wool, and you promise yourself tomorrow you will try again. Because what else can you do in a world like this but go on trying? At first, you tell yourself it is only exhaustion, a heaviness in your limbs, a fog behind your eyes. You will rest, you think, and it will pass. But rest is rare, and the heaviness remains, settling into your bones until you begin to suspect it will never leave. You see your own reflection sometimes in a puddle of rainwater, in the smudged glass of a merchant's window. You barely recognize the face staring back. It is pale, hollow eyed, lips cracked from endless cold and use. You have lost the softness that once lingered on your cheeks, the lightness that children sometimes carry even in a world like this. What remains is a person shaped by hunger and sorrow and the mechanical repetition of your work. You wake and you kiss and you walk and you sleep. Sometimes you do not remember where one day ends and the next begins. Sometimes you forget what month it is. The year passes not as a sequence of seasons or festivals. There are no real festivals here, but as a slow drift from bad to worse. A new sickness arrives, and then another. The village shrinks by another face, another family, and still the mud grows deeper and the hunger sharper. You notice changes in the people around you. The old woman who shares your room has stopped muttering her nightly curses and now only stares at the wall, lips moving in silent prayer or silent resignation. You are not sure which. The girl no longer rocks, but lies flat on her pallet, her breath shallow, eyes wide and empty. The coughing old men now sound as if they are under water, and their silences stretch longer each night. When you wake in the darkness, you sometimes think you hear them weeping. Once you might have tried to help. You might have offered them a story, a song, or even a comforting hand. Now you find yourself drawing away. Your kindness, like everything else, has grown thin. There is only so much to go around, and you must save what little remains for your rounds, for the faces who come to your door, for the illusion that you are still useful. You start to notice little things going missing. A crust of bread you were saving disappears. The patchwork blanket you wrapped yourself in at night is replaced by a thinner, itchier one. You suspect one of your housemates, but you say nothing. There is nothing to say. Hunger is a thief with many hands, and you are not innocent either. Your body has become a record of your labor. Your hands are chapped and swollen, your lips perpetually raw. You develop sores that do not heal, aches that never leave. When you cough, you taste iron, but you ignore it. There is no time for illness. Illness is for others. You are needed, or so you tell yourself. You must keep moving, keep kissing, keep living. You cannot afford the luxury of weakness. Sometimes, in the coldest hours of morning, you remember the old stories. They surface in your mind unbidden, a tale your mother once told, a memory of a healer in a faraway land whose touch could banish plague. In these stories, there is always a moment of triumph, a turning point where hope is rewarded and the sick rise from their beds, laughing and whole. You imagine what it would feel like to witness such a miracle, to believe, truly believe, that your work might matter. But dawn always comes, and with it, the reality of another day. There is no triumph here. There is only survival, one miserable hour at a time. The peasants who come to you have begun to look at you differently. Some eyes are full of blame. Why did your kiss not save their mother, their son, their friend? Others are filled with something worse, the hollow, bottomless despair of those who have lost everything but do not yet know how to die. You dread both types. Blame and despair are poisons, slow but certain, and you feel them eating away at your own insides. You notice the changes in yourself most sharply when you remember who you used to be. Once you dreamed of escape, of travel, of something brighter than this daily mud and blood. Once you wanted to make a difference. Now you are not sure you want anything at all. Your days are shaped by other people's pain. You move from one suffering to the next, collecting it as if it were your tax to pay for existing. You do not know if you are helping or simply adding to the burden. Sometimes you imagine the village without you. Try to picture what would change. The answer is always the same: nothing or almost nothing. Suffering would continue as it always does. Life would grind forward as it always has. You cannot remember the last time you laughed. The idea of laughter feels foreign, even dangerous, as if it might attract the attention of fate and invite a new misfortune. Better to keep your head down, to move quietly, to pretend you are invisible. Invisible, yes, that is what you are becoming. Not just to others, but to yourself each day. You give away another piece of yourself, a smile, a story, a gesture of comfort, a small hope. In exchange, you receive only the certainty that you will be needed again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. As night falls, you lie on your narrow pallet, listening to the sounds of others breathing, coughing, whispering in the dark. You wonder, for the thousandth time, how much longer you can continue. And you know, with the bone deep certainty of a condemned soul, that you will keep going because there is no choice and because you have already forgotten how to stop. You would never have believed this once. In the earliest days of your work, you approached each patient as a problem to solve, a collection of symptoms with a theoretical cure. If the fever could be cooled, if the cough soothed, if the rash contained, then the job was done. But now, after so many years, after so many failures, you have begun to notice something else festering behind the illnesses, the silent rot that eats away at the soul. It is in the way people look at you, not just with hope, not just with desperation, but with the longing for something beyond survival. There are days when you see it clearly, a hunger for gentleness, for attention, for a reminder that life is more than pain and waiting for death. It is not only the sick who are suffering, it is not only the bodies that are broken. The soul, too can wither and decay. This realization does not come as a comfort. If anything, it makes the work harder. Now you are aware that every kiss, every touch, every word you offer carries a different weight. You know that for some, you are the only warm hand they will feel all month. For others, your eyes are the only ones that see them as more than another mouth to feed, another burden to bury when the end comes. You do not remember when you first noticed the change. Perhaps it was the winter when the sickness took 3 children from a single family, and you watched the father sink into a quiet from which he never returned. Perhaps it was the spring you spent tending to the old woman who insisted she was already dead, who clung to your hand as if touch alone might anchor her in the world a little longer. Or maybe it was simply the long, slow erosion of hope that shapes every day here. Now you are more careful with your words. You sit a little longer by the bedsides, listen to stories that meander and repeat and go nowhere. Sometimes people confess things to you, not sins, but memories, old joys, tiny fragments of life that seem to surprise even them. A boy will whisper about the time he saw a fox in the woods. A woman will recall her wedding day. An old man will hum a half forgotten song. You collect these moments, store them somewhere inside you, as if they might add up to something meaningful. You realize that healing is not only a matter of fighting death. Sometimes it is enough to push back the darkness for a moment, to give someone a reason to remember that they are still alive. You do not have the power to cure most diseases, but you can offer a kind of mercy, a gentle word, a moment of peace, a space in which suffering is acknowledged rather than ignored. This does not make you a saint. You know the villagers' gratitude is fleeting, their anger quick to return. When another child dies or another harvest fails, the memory of your kindness vanishes. In the eyes of most, you are still a last resort, a desperate gamble, a ritual performed at the edge of hope. But you have learned to accept this. The work is not about thanks. The work is about not letting the world become completely indifferent. There is irony here, a bitter one. You, who feel your own soul slipping away, are now expected to tend to the souls of others. You, who barely remember how to hope, are asked to kindle hope in the dying. Sometimes it feels like a cruel joke, a punishment crafted by a God who delights in paradoxes. You have become a keeper of secrets, a bearer of confessions. People tell you things they cannot say to their families, fears they cannot voice even to themselves. You learn who is afraid of dying, who is afraid of living. You listen as they rage against the unfairness, as they grieve for lost children and vanished loves, as they pray for forgiveness for things that in this world are hardly sins at all. The burden of all these stories grows heavier with each passing year. You carry them in your head, in your heart, in your body. They are the shadow that follows you, the ache that will not leave your bones. At night, when the house is quiet except for the breathing of your roommates, you replay the confessions in your mind, trying to find meaning in the pain. Sometimes you envy those who still have faith in God, in luck, in the future. You have seen too much to believe in easy miracles, but you still believe in small mercies. A child's laughter, the warmth of sunlight on your face after a long winter, the quiet companionship of another suffering soul. In rare moments, you even allow yourself to think that your work matters, not because it cures, but because it witnesses. In a world that so often looks away from pain, you are the one who looks. You are the one who listens. You understand now that the soul can sicken, that despair is as contagious as any fever. You cannot cure it, but you can resist it. For a little while, for a little longer, you can hold the line. Tomorrow, the cycle will continue. There will be new faces, new illnesses, new confessions. And you, broken but still moving, will bear witness. You will offer what comfort you can, knowing it is never enough, and knowing somehow that this is the point. There is a rhythm to the misery, a relentless monotony that seeps into every fiber of village life. You witness it not only in the faces that come to your door, but in the way people carry themselves, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the ground, steps slow and heavy, as if every movement is another debt to fate. Time does not flow here. It drags, sticky and unchanging, the days blending into each other like a muddy river that never clears. Once there were feasts. Once there were harvest dances, laughter in the fields, the occasional fire-lit song that cut through the gloom. You remember those faintly, as if they belonged to another world, or perhaps just a story told to a child to keep away the nightmares. Now, celebrations are rare and small, more an act of stubbornness than joy. Bread is thinner, beer is more water than barley, and when there is music, it sounds tired, like an old man humming to himself because he cannot remember the words. You walk through the village square and feel the weight of their resignation. The peasants labor because there is nothing else to do. They scratch at the earth for roots, patch leaking roofs, argue over scraps, and barter endlessly. One chicken for 2 loaves, a length of thread for a broken knife, a worn shoe for a handful of firewood. No one expects plenty. Everyone is just trying to last until next season, as if survival itself is a kind of victory. Children, who should be full of mischief, play in silence or not at all. They mimic the routines of their elders, helping with chores far too heavy for their small hands. You see their games, building tiny mud houses, imitating the gestures of planting, harvesting, or sometimes funerals. They know already that the world is hard and will not be made softer by tears. You watch a group of boys gather around the well. Their laughter is forced, brittle. They dare each other to lean closer, to peer into the black water, as if daring the darkness itself to reach out. When one boy stumbles and nearly falls in, the others do not laugh, only exchange wary glances. Even the well is not a place for play. It is too necessary, too close to survival, too easily lost. The adults fare no better. You see the look in their eyes as they go about their routines, gathering sticks, mending nets, tending to the same thin goats, exchanging the same tired greetings. Conversation is sparse and always about work, food, or sickness. Jokes are rare, and when they do come, they have an edge to them, a bitterness that leaves a taste of ashes. You sense it most sharply in the moments of pause, when a man stops, hand on his shovel, and stares at the sky as if expecting it to answer him. When a woman sits, motionless, beside her empty basket, lips moving silently in a prayer she no longer believes in. When the old gather by the church steps, saying nothing at all, just watching the world shrink around them. Sometimes you are called to a home and find not illness, but something worse, a kind of quiet defeat. A woman will ask you to bless her house, or to simply sit with her as she stares at a wall that has seen too many winters. An old man will request a kiss, not because he is sick, but because he cannot remember the last time someone touched him with any sort of gentleness. These are not healings, they are acknowledgments of despair. The uselessness of your own role becomes clearer. You are not a savior. You are a witness to their ongoing unraveling, a participant in their endless cycle of loss. Sometimes you think your kisses are less about hope than about marking time. One more gesture in a world that no longer expects miracles, but is too stubborn to stop performing the rituals of hope. Your own spirit feels the strain. The lines between one day and the next blur until you find yourself wondering if you are not simply reliving the same day over and over, with only the faces changing, only the wounds and absences shuffled in the pattern. The weight of their emptiness piles atop your own until you are uncertain where you end and their sorrow begins. At night, in your squalid room, the exhaustion presses down. You hear the creaks and sighs of your fellow tenants. No one sleeps easily, not anymore. When dreams do come, they are feverish and brief, filled with images of drowning, of endless wandering through fog, of reaching out for someone who never turns around. You wake, heart pounding, lips numb, unsure whether it is better to dream or not to dream at all. You wonder if there is a point at which a life becomes so meaningless that it simply collapses into itself like an empty sack. You wonder if there is a threshold where pain no longer registers, where hunger is no longer felt, where the soul simply gives up and floats away, leaving the body to repeat its habits like an animal in a cage. You think perhaps some of the villagers have already crossed that line, and you wonder how close you are yourself. Each morning, you rise, wash your face with cold water, and brace yourself for another day of watching lives flicker and fade. There is nothing left but habit, ritual, and the thin hope that tomorrow might be different, though you know in your bones that it will not be. Still, you go on. Still, you offer your kisses. Still, you watch and wait and bear witness to the slow, grinding erosion of meaning. It happens gradually, like the slow encroachment of rot at the edges of a wooden door, subtle, invisible at first, until suddenly it is everywhere. You notice it in the way people's conversations pause when you approach, the way their eyes slide away from yours. You notice it in the questions that no longer come, the invitations to meager meals that dry up, the way people find excuses to step around you on the narrow street as if you are something to be avoided, a shadow of bad luck. Once you believed you were part of the village. You shared its burdens, its hunger, its hope. You worked alongside the others. You stood shoulder to shoulder in the church on cold mornings. You listened to the gossip and nodded at the old jokes. But now, something has shifted. Your title, Master of Kisses, which once seemed like a simple fact of your existence, has become a mark of difference. They speak of you when they think you are not listening. You catch the shape of your own name on their lips, edged with pity, with suspicion, with a kind of frightened awe. You suppose it makes sense. You are, after all, the one who moves among the dying, the one who presses your mouth to fevered flesh, who carries the scent of the sick wherever you go. To touch you is to brush the edge of that other world, the world of death and suffering and failed hope. You do not blame them for their caution. You do not blame them for their distance, but it leaves you cold, and the cold never truly goes away. Your daily work becomes a kind of wandering exile. You travel from house to house, welcomed only out of necessity, never warmth. Doors open for you just wide enough to admit you, and no wider. Children are called away. Mothers avert their faces. Some people, those with something left to lose, cross themselves as you pass, as if to ward off a curse. It is as though you are becoming invisible, not because you are unnoticed, but because you are too sharply noticed, too painfully associated with things no one wants to face. The sense of otherness follows you back to your own home. Even here, among the sick and desperate, you feel apart. Your housemates give you a wide berth. The girl no longer meets your gaze. The old woman mutters to herself. In the farthest corner, the coughing men cough quietly, as if afraid to infect you, though it is you, more than anyone, who should be afraid of them. At night, your dreams are crowded with voices that do not speak to you, faces that turn away just as you reach out to touch them. You try to tell yourself that this is just a phase, that people will come around, that the walls will thin with time. But you have seen enough to know better. In times of plenty, difference is a curiosity, even a blessing. In times of fear and scarcity, it becomes a threat. You are not just different, you are a reminder of sickness, of failure, of how little control anyone truly has over their fate. You wonder what would happen if you left. Would the village notice? Would they grieve, or would they sigh in relief, happy to be rid of the uneasy figure who haunts their streets? You imagine your room slowly filling with dust, your place at the hearth unclaimed, your rounds left for someone else, though who would take them and why? Sometimes you think that you could vanish, step into the mist at the edge of the fields, and the world would close over you as if you had never been. There is irony here, too. You are called on to save, to heal, to comfort, yet you yourself are increasingly untouchable, uncomforted. The price of your work is not just fatigue or the risk of illness, but this slow drift from the world you once belonged to until you become a ghost in your own life. You try, now and then, to push back against the growing wall. You linger a little longer in conversation, force a smile you no longer feel, accept a seat on a cold bench even when no one speaks. But each attempt is rebuffed, gently or not, and the message is clear. Your place is at the edge. You are a necessary presence, but never a welcome one. On the rare nights when you are invited to share a meal, a bowl of thin stew, a crust of stale bread, you find yourself tongue tied, unsure what to say, unable to enter the rhythm of their talk. You listen to the laughter, the stories, and feel as if you are eavesdropping on a language you no longer understand. When you laugh, it sounds forced, even to your own ears. The exclusion becomes a habit. Eventually, you stop expecting anything else. You fill your time with silence, with the routines of your work, with the rituals that keep you moving from day to day. You become your own confidant, your own witness. The world narrows around you until it is just you and your role, master of kisses, outsider, watcher at the threshold. It is a lonely place to be. But loneliness, you discover, is like hunger, at first unbearable, but eventually you grow used to the ache. It becomes part of you, a quiet companion, a reminder that whatever else you have lost, you have not yet lost yourself. Tomorrow, you will walk the same streets, knock on the same doors, press your lips to the same fevered brows. You will carry the scent of the sick, the weight of their hope, the knowledge of your own exile. You will endure because that is what you do, and because there is no one left to do it in your stead. And somewhere in the cold hollow of your heart, you will wonder how much longer you can live as a stranger in the only world you have ever known. At first, it is only a cough that lingers. It clings to you like the chill in the early mornings, never quite letting go. When you cough, you taste bitterness, sometimes blood. You tell yourself it is nothing, that you are just tired, that the winter is always hard, that your lungs have always been weak. But you know the signs. You have seen them 100 times in others. The persistent ache, the sore joints, the heaviness that refuses to leave your bones. Still, you push yourself through the daily motions. You rise before dawn, despite the pain in your chest, and pull on your patched tunic with hands that tremble. You force yourself to eat, though the bread tastes like dust, the broth like river water, and the act of swallowing itself is an effort. Your lips, always chapped, now bleed when you wake. You hide the blood as best you can. Your hands begin to shake as you work. You drop things, a bowl here, a cup there. When you kneel beside the sick, you sometimes have to steady yourself on the edge of the bed before leaning in for the ritual kiss. You fear the villagers notice, but if they do, they say nothing. Perhaps they are too desperate for help to risk offending you. Or perhaps they simply do not care if their healer is falling ill. It is not only your body that betrays you. Your memory has become unreliable. You forget names, forget which child belongs to which family, forget whether you have already visited this house this week or the week before. Sometimes you lose whole hours, drifting in a haze, as if the world itself has slipped away. You catch yourself staring at nothing, lips moving silently, as if rehearsing lines from a play you never auditioned for. Your sleep is plagued by feverish dreams. You sweat through the night, tangled in your thin blanket, mouth dry, heart pounding. In your dreams, you walk the village streets, but the houses are all empty, the windows dark, the doors sealed shut. You call out for someone, anyone, but no one answers. Sometimes you wake gasping, certain that you have been crying out loud. You try to ignore it. You try to keep your fear buried, to focus on the faces that come to you each day, on the work that must be done. But the effort is enormous. Each kiss you offer feels heavier, more draining. When you leave a sick bed, you feel as if you have left a piece of yourself behind. Energy, hope, the very substance of your soul. The villagers do not notice or pretend not to. Their problems are too immediate, too consuming for them to worry over the state of the master of kisses. You are still needed, so you are still called for. You do not allow yourself the luxury of refusal. When you falter, when you sit too long beside a patient, when your breath rattles in your chest, you mutter about the cold or the hard work. You lie, and you lie well, because you must. The days shorten, and the darkness grows longer. The village is quieter now, fewer voices, fewer faces, more empty spaces at the tables and in the doorways. The winter is hard, harder than you remember, but perhaps all winters are hard when you are sick. The food is scarce, the firewood scarcer. You huddle with your housemates for warmth, but the cold seems to find its way inside you no matter what you do. You wonder, often, how much longer you can last. You wonder if the others know how close you are to joining those you have tried to save. You try to recall the last time you felt strong, the last time you walked through the village without pain. It feels like another life, a memory belonging to someone else. You suspect you will not return to it. One evening, as you prepare to leave a sick child's house, the mother stops you. She offers you a piece of bread, her hands shaking with gratitude or fear or exhaustion. You cannot tell which. You take the bread, even though you know you will not keep it down. You force yourself to thank her, to smile, to pretend that all is well. She watches you go, and you feel her eyes on your back until you are lost in the fog. Back in your room, you collapse onto your pallet. You listen to the old woman muttering, the men coughing, the girl breathing shallowly beside you. You close your eyes and count your breaths, wondering if you will still be counting come morning. You know now, with a kind of resigned certainty, that your body is breaking down. The disease is no longer just something you fight in others. It is inside you, a slow, patient invader. You do not know how much longer you can continue, but tomorrow you will rise, you will dress, and you will go out into the cold streets once more, because that is what you do, because that is all there is. You do not hope for a miracle. You do not pray for deliverance. You ask only for the strength to keep moving forward, one aching day at a time, until the work is done or you are done with the work. And when sleep finally comes, it is a heavy, merciless thing, and you surrender to it without resistance, as you have surrendered to everything else. You are reminded of this every time you venture out from your cramped, sour smelling shelter into the winding streets and alleyways. At a glance, the village appears simple, a huddle of cottages and hovels, a few larger houses standing like bruised teeth around the square, the distant silhouette of the church tower looming over everything. But beneath the surface, there is nothing simple about this place. Every corner holds secrets. Every silence is loaded. Every smile hides something sharp beneath. There is no real privacy here, yet secrets thrive like weeds. You know this because you are both a confessor and an outcast. People pour out their fears and wishes to you in their moments of weakness, trusting that you, the master of kisses, will keep their words safe, if only because you are already a keeper of so much suffering. You know who steals from the baker, who lies about the weight of their flour, who sneaks into whose bed at night, who hoards a little extra wood or salt for the winter. You keep all this inside you, unspoken, because you know that knowledge is as dangerous as hunger. Sometimes the contradictions are almost comical if you are in the right mood. The priest announces superstition from the pulpit, then pays you to bless his gout ridden feet, convinced you possess some ancient magic. The blacksmith complains loudly about lechery, then spends his nights in the arms of a widow whose husband died just last harvest. The elders lecture the young on piety and patience, but you have seen them bicker over moldy apples, shoving and cursing like children. There is a kind of dark amusement in these hypocrisies, a reminder that no one, not even those who claim wisdom, is immune to the little shames and hungers of survival. You pass a group of women in the street, their heads close together, voices low. They break apart as you approach, faces arranged in masks of politeness. You know, without knowing, that you are the subject of their whispers. Once, this would have stung. Now, it feels inevitable. You are the outsider, the necessary anomaly, both trusted and shunned, feared and relied upon. When someone needs you, the doors open. When the need is gone, the doors close twice as fast. In the alleys, the darkness is thicker, and it hides both danger and mercy. There is a boy who moves like a shadow, filching bread crusts and rat skins from window sills. You see him slip through gaps that grown men could not manage, and you pretend not to notice. There is an old man who sleeps in the ruins of a barn, talking to ghosts only he can see. Sometimes you leave a piece of bread for him where he can find it. Sometimes you wonder if anyone will do the same for you when your time comes. The contradictions bleed into the houses too. There are families who sit together at the end of the day, faces tired but kind, sharing what little they have. There are others who cannot look at one another, the air between them thick with resentments and unshed tears. There are houses where the only warmth is the fire, and even that is stingy and unpredictable. You see these things and more because you are the one who walks everywhere, who is called into every corner and crawl space, who listens at every bedside. The villagers think they know you, but they do not. They know your role, your ritual, your weary face. They do not know the catalog of small cruelties and brief mercies you keep, the stories you carry, the unspoken questions that gather in your chest like dust. And always, always, there is the shadow of danger, violence, both petty and great. You have seen it in the aftermath of drunken fights, in the purple marks left by jealous hands, in the way some children flinch when their fathers enter the room. Violence here is as common as mud, as inescapable as hunger. It simmers beneath the surface, waiting for a bad harvest, a harsh word, a moment of weakness. You know it is only luck, not law, that keeps any one of you safe from it on any given day. And yet there are moments when kindness surfaces unexpectedly, as if only to prove that darkness cannot win entirely. A neighbor sharing a secret handful of beans, a stranger lifting an old woman after she has fallen in the mud. You, sitting beside a dying child, whispering nonsense until she smiles for a moment through her fever. These things are fleeting, but they are real, and you hold on to them as tightly as you can. Sometimes you think that the town is alive, an animal made of contradictions, equal parts cruelty and compassion, hypocrisy and hope. You are just one cell in its diseased body, playing your part until you are replaced or rot away. In the evening, as you walk back through the deepening dusk, you feel the contradictions pressing in from all sides. The laughter from a window, sharp and genuine, mingles with the distant sound of someone sobbing. A dog barks and then is silent. Somewhere a bell rings, but no one seems to know why. Back in your own dark corner, you lie awake, turning over the day's memories like stones in a river. Some are smooth and cold, some are jagged. All of them, together, make up the true shape of the town, a shape you cannot change but cannot ignore. Tomorrow, the shadows will lengthen a little more. The corners will deepen. The contradictions will multiply, and you will navigate them as you always do, uncertain whether you are their witness or their victim. This revelation does not come to you as a single dramatic thunderclap, but as a slow, creeping certainty, like mold spreading through the beams of your home. There are mornings now when you lie in your straw pallet, staring at the ceiling, and you can feel it in your bones. The world will not change, not for you, not for anyone. The hunger, the cold, the filth, the endless rituals of hope and loss, these things are as permanent as the rising and setting of the sun. At first, you resist this thought. You look for signs, however small, that life can improve. Perhaps this year's harvest will be better. Perhaps the spring will come early. Perhaps someone new will arrive. a wandering tinker, a healer from some faraway city who will bring a whiff of something different, a change in the air. But each time, hope curdles before it can ripen. The fields flood or dry up, the wind turns harsh. The newcomers, when they appear, are only more mouths to feed, more trouble for the village to endure. Even your own rituals, your famous kisses, have begun to feel like part of the mechanism that keeps everything locked in place. The villagers talk about change as if it is a living thing, something that could be summoned or banished at will. Maybe next year, they mutter as they mend roofs or dig graves. Things will be different when the king dies, they say, as if new taxes or a new banner could ever touch the deep, ancient ache in the village's bones. You see the same children grow into the same tired adults, inherit the same patches of land, make the same bargains with hunger and fate. Once, when you were younger and still believed in the transformative power of a single act, you tried to be a force for change. You spoke up at meetings. You brought suggestions, new ways to plant, new prayers to try, new medicines whispered about in stories. Each idea was met with the same cautious stare, the same polite nod, the same slow burial under 1,000 reasons why nothing could ever be different. It's always been this way, they told you. It's not for us to change the world. You see it now everywhere you look. The carpenter's son, bright eyed and full of schemes, now limps through the mud, his ambitions shrunk to the size of a bowl of porridge. The midwife, once the source of sharp laughter and gentle scolding, now sits silent by the fire, hands idle, eyes glazed. The priest still rails against sin and prays for deliverance, but even his sermons have grown mechanical, the words worn smooth by repetition. It is not just the villagers who have given up on change. You have too. The realization settles over you like a wet blanket. The work you do is not about transformation. It is about staving off the worst for another day. When you press your lips to a feverish brow, you are not rewriting anyone's fate. You are only buying time, a few more hours or days of pain and waiting. The moment the patient's breath slows, the moment you step back into the mud and cold, the world resumes its march towards the inevitable. Even the landscape mocks the idea of change. The same puddles form in the same ruts year after year. The same crows caw from the same bare trees. The river overflows, then recedes, then overflows again. The horizon remains stubborn, refusing to reveal anything new. And yet, despite this certainty, you keep moving. Habit is stronger than hope. You go where you are called. You perform your duty. You accept the small offerings and the muttered thanks, the sidelong glances and the superstitious gestures. You tell yourself it is enough. What else is there? You are not the hero in anyone's story, not even your own. You are only another cog in the slow, grinding machine. Some evenings, you allow yourself a moment of dark humor. Perhaps your kisses are what keeps the world from changing. Perhaps if you simply stopped, everything would finally collapse or be reborn. But even this thought cannot rouse you from your routine. It is easier to continue, to let the current carry you, to become another unchanging fact in a world built on unchanging facts. You find a strange comfort in this, in knowing your place in the order of things. The unpredictability of hope, the pain of failed expectations, these can be put aside. There is only the next task, the next patient, the next cold morning and hungry evening. Your world will not change, and neither will you. As the night falls, and you hear the familiar chorus of coughing, the groan of shifting bodies, the muttered prayers and curses of your housemates, you settle into the slow heartbeat of this reality. It is neither good nor bad. It simply is. You sleep, knowing that tomorrow will bring nothing new, and understanding, at last, that this is both the tragedy and the comfort of your life. You notice it first in the subtle ways, pauses in conversation when you pass the churchyard, glances exchanged among the faithful when your name is spoken, the growing habit of seeing a black robed figure standing by your door just as dawn breaks. The priests have always been present in the village, always hovering on the edge of every tragedy and celebration, always ready with a blessing or a warning. But now, their visits are more insistent, more invasive, as if you yourself have become a site of spiritual interest or concern. It begins innocuously, with polite inquiries about your health and your work. The young priest, barely more than a boy himself, comes with a basket of stale bread and half rotten apples, eyes wide with what might be concern or curiosity. He sits across from you in the squalid corner where you live, folding his hands in his lap and asking careful, measured questions. How do you bear the burden, my child? He says. How do you stay so close to suffering without losing yourself? You are not sure if this is a test or a confession, but you give him the only answer you have. You do what you must, and then you do it again. Other priests follow. The old priest, sour and stooped, visits at dusk when the room is filled with shadows and the smell of boiled onions. He brings stories of saints and martyrs, stories where suffering is always rewarded, always redeemed. You nod and try to listen, but the tales slip from your grasp like water from cupped hands. You have seen too much unredeemed suffering to believe in their neat endings. Over time, their questions sharpen. They want to know the secrets of your ritual, what prayers you whisper, what thoughts pass through your mind as you kiss the dying. They ask if you have seen miracles, real miracles, not just the brief reprieve of a fever breaking, but something that would make even the most skeptical believe. Sometimes you think they want to catch you in heresy, to find some crack in your methods they can patch with holy water and penance. At first, their interest flatters you. You have spent so long as an outsider, so long as the object of suspicion and superstition, that their attention feels almost like acceptance. When they press you to join their prayers, to light a candle for the souls you serve, you comply, not out of faith, but out of a desperate longing to be seen, to be included. You kneel on cold stone, murmur the words, let the incense sting your eyes, and try to feel something more than the ache in your knees. But the priests do not offer comfort, only expectations. They speak of duty and sacrifice, of carrying burdens for the sake of others, of how every trial is a test of faith. You listen, and you wonder if any of them have ever truly been hungry or cold or watched someone they love slip away with no miracle in sight. You suspect not. Their suffering is always at a safe distance, wrapped in ritual, contained by ceremony. Yours is in your bones, in your blood, in the quiet moments after a failed kiss, when you realize there is nothing left to give. Their visits grow longer. The young priest begins to bring more elaborate gifts: a cracked wooden cross, a scrap of holy cloth, a flask of watered wine. He urges you to pray for your soul, to confess your doubts, to accept the grace that is waiting for you if only you would reach out. The old priest is harsher. He warns you that pride is the greatest sin, that to imagine yourself as a savior is to fall into the devil's trap. He reminds you again and again that all healing comes from God, not from mortal lips. You grow weary of their company. Their questions feel like accusations, their concern a weight you did not ask for. You begin to dread the sound of footsteps outside your door, the knock that signals another round of interrogation disguised as comfort. You wonder if they truly care for your soul, or if you are simply another story they will tell in the years to come, a curiosity, a lesson, a warning. There is a moment, one evening, when the young priest asks if you are afraid for your own salvation. You look at him, and you see the fear flickering in his eyes, not for you, but for himself, for the boundaries of his faith, and the uncertainty of the world outside his prayers. I am afraid of many things, you say, but not that. You do not elaborate. There is no language for the kind of fear that lives in you now, no prayer for the loneliness that has become your only companion. Eventually, the priests begin to pull back, sensing perhaps that you are beyond their reach, or that your presence brings more questions than answers. Their gifts grow smaller, their visits shorter, until finally they stop coming altogether. You are left, once again, with your own silence, your own rituals, your own slow drift towards something that is neither damnation nor redemption, but simply endurance. In the quiet that follows, you find no relief, only the realization that the only prayers that matter are the ones you utter without words. Each time you enter another sick room, each time you press your lips to a fevered brow, each time you accept that the world will remain unchanged no matter how many miracles are asked for. You go back to your work. The priests will tell their stories, the villagers will continue their routines, and you will be the same as you ever were, alone, uncertain, and endlessly necessary in a world that does not care if you are saved or damned, only that you keep moving forward. You begin to mark the passage of time, not by seasons or saints' days, but by the accumulation of small defeats. There is no turning point, no night of sudden despair, No moment of grand epiphany. Instead, the weight settles on you by degrees, an incremental thickening of the air around your head and chest. You wake each morning already exhausted, as if the world presses down on you with hands made of stone. The outside world grows less distinct. The mud, the alleys, the pale sky, all of it blurs together as if painted in water and left to run. You still perform your ritual, rise, eat a scrap of bread, move from house to house, offer what little comfort you can. But everything feels remote, as if you are watching your own life from a distance. Even the faces of the dying, once so sharp and urgent, begin to fade into a general wash of suffering. Sometimes you think of the word gloom, and it seems almost too gentle for what surrounds you now. There is nothing gentle about it. The darkness in this place is dense, physical, and relentless. It fills the cracks in the walls and the corners of every room. It curls around your neck when you try to sleep and settles in your lungs when you try to speak. You do not notice when you stop caring about your own comfort. Your clothes are always damp, your skin perpetually chapped. You no longer feel the difference between hunger and fullness. There is simply a constant dull ache, sometimes sharper, sometimes fainter, but always present. The firewood runs out early this year, and you and your housemates huddle together in the cold, conserving your breath, trying not to wake the rats that nest in the straw. The old woman has stopped talking altogether. She stares at the wall for hours, her lips moving silently. The coughing men cough less now, but their silences stretch so long. You sometimes fear they have died in the night, and you listen for the telltale rattle of breath to be sure. The silent girl lies curled in her rags, eyes wide open, unblinking in the dark. You speak to them less and less. What is there to say? When you walk through the village, you feel invisible and exposed all at once. The villagers look through you, past you, or over your shoulder. Their conversations stop when you approach and start again only when you have gone. You are tolerated, necessary, but always at arm's length, too much a reminder of mortality to be truly welcomed. The rituals of life and death continue in spite of your numbness. There are births and there are deaths, but they no longer seem like opposites, only two parts of the same endless cycle. You are summoned for both, to kiss a newborn, to comfort a dying mother, to bear witness to joy as thin and fleeting as a wisp of fog. The world remains stubbornly the same, and your part in it grows heavier with each repetition. Sometimes, late at night, you remember the visits from the priests, their words about redemption and suffering. You try to recall the feeling of hope, the sense that suffering has meaning, but it is lost to you now. All you can feel is the dull certainty that this is all there is: pain, ritual, and endurance. You cannot remember the last time you wanted anything for yourself. Wanting seems dangerous, a luxury you can no longer afford. You watch others, searching for signs of life that you might borrow. Now and then you see a mother laugh at a child's joke, or hear a song rise above the gloom, tentative but persistent. These moments hurt more than they help. They remind you of the things you can no longer reach, the lightness, the possibility, the simple trust that life might one day be different. Sleep, when it comes, is a gray, dreamless thing. You wake uncertain of how much time has passed, or even if you have truly slept at all. You sometimes envy the dead, not because you wish for death, but because they seem to have escaped the endless, grinding monotony that has become your existence. There is no romance in the idea of oblivion, only a vague curiosity about what it would mean to stop. You wonder sometimes if the world feels your absence when you sink too deep into the gloom. Does the village notice when your kisses grow slower, your touch less certain? Do the dying sense your reluctance, your distance? Or are they too far gone themselves to care? You do not ask. You do not want to know the answer. The gloom becomes your companion, closer than any living soul. It walks with you from door to door, sits beside you on your straw mattress, slips into your mouth when you try to speak. You learn to live with it, to breathe it in, to let it fill the empty spaces where hope used to reside. Yet, even in the deepest gloom, you keep moving, not out of faith, not out of hope, not even out of duty, but simply because you do not know how to stop. You are a body in motion, a ritual in flesh, a habit the world cannot yet break. Tomorrow you will rise again, walk the same muddy paths, perform the same rituals. You will carry the gloom with you, heavy and constant, a cloak that no one else sees. And you will wait without knowing what you are waiting for, because that, too, is what life has become. You did not come to this conclusion all at once. It is the product of many years and many losses, like water slowly wearing away the sharpness of a stone. It creeps in on you in moments between exhaustion and duty, when the world is especially gray, when you find yourself staring at the sky and waiting for a sun you no longer expect. There is a peculiar comfort in resignation. At first, you fought against it, tried to carve out some small space of happiness, a spark of hope, a moment of meaning. You told yourself stories of saints and heroes, of miraculous changes, of a world where suffering is balanced by joy. But those stories grow thinner each time they are told. Each disappointment chips away at their power. Each failure adds another layer of armor between you and hope. Now you no longer believe in rescue, neither from outside nor from within. The darkness is not something that falls upon you, it is something you wear, a second skin. You recognize it in the hollow look of your own eyes, in the way you move through the world without expecting kindness, in the numbness that fills the spaces where dreams used to bloom. The idea that you might be happy, or even simply free from pain, has faded to a memory, then to a myth, and finally to a joke told only to yourself on sleepless nights. You realize, too, that you are not alone in this fate. The villagers walk the same muddy paths, wrapped in their own private darkness. You see it in their hunched shoulders, their careful silences, their faces that close like doors when sorrow is near. You catch it in the whispered prayers of the old, in the bitterness of the young, in the way everyone measures their words as if each one carries a cost. You become an expert in small, defensive rituals. You check your pockets for crumbs or coins you do not have. You count your steps from your pallet to the door, from the door to the square, from the square to the next patient's house. You find yourself touching the same spot on the wall each time you pass, as if it might remind you that you are still here, still solid, still able to choose to move, even if only in circles. Every so often, someone asks you, gently or not, if you regret your role. Would you give it up if you could? They say. Would you leave if you had the chance? You have stopped lying in response. I do not know, you say, because what would it mean to be anything but this? Even your unhappiness has become a habit, a shape you have grown to fit. There is a certain power in embracing your own misery, in refusing to hope for what cannot be. You learn to watch the world without expectation. The sunrise is just another marker between one darkness and the next. The rare laughter of children is something you observe but do not approach. Even the joy that sometimes stirs in others, a wedding, a good harvest, a birth, feels distant, like a tale from another village, another life. You attend, you nod, you participate in the rituals, but your heart is never really present. You have dreams sometimes in which you are not yourself. You dream of running, of flight, of a version of you that did not inherit this grim legacy. In those dreams, your hands are not rough and cracked. Your lips are not instruments of futile mercy. You wake from these dreams with a sense of loss so deep it aches, and for a moment you are angry at the world, at the villagers, at yourself. But the anger, like everything else, dulls quickly and is replaced by resignation. You become superstitious in ways you never were before. You avoid certain streets, certain houses, certain faces. You start to believe that luck is not only scarce, but actively hostile. The universe, you decide, is not indifferent, but quietly, methodically cruel. You perform your rituals with extra care, not because you think they will work, but because not doing them would feel like tempting whatever darkness still waits to claim the last scraps of your soul. One winter night, as the wind howls through the cracks in your wall and your housemates toss and moan in uneasy sleep, you feel the weight of your fate more heavily than ever. You lie awake, listening to the rasp of your own breath, feeling the ache in your joints, the rawness of your throat. You imagine the village empty, swallowed by the darkness, the river frozen, and the fields barren, and yourself alone in the center of it all, a ghost bound to a place that has long since forgotten your name. Yet, for all your certainty, a part of you still resists. It is small, so small you can almost pretend it is not there. But sometimes it flares up when you catch the gleam of candlelight in a neighbor's window, when a child's hand finds yours for a moment of comfort, when you hear, faint and fleeting, the echo of your own laughter from a time before you were this person. It does not change anything, but it keeps you moving. It is not hope, not really, but the memory of hope, enough to keep your feet on the ground, your lips moving through the rituals, your body rising again each morning. So you continue. You wear your darkness as others wear cloaks, heavy and familiar, a shield and a prison. You walk the muddy streets. You enter the cold houses. You press your lips to burning brows. The darkness is your fate, but it is also your truth, your inheritance, your only certainty in a world that offers no certainties at all. And in that darkness, you survive. Not because you wish to, not because you believe in a brighter tomorrow, but because you have become, if nothing else, an expert in enduring. This thought arrives not with a shout, but with a whisper. It settles quietly over your shoulders one gray morning as you watch a thin layer of frost dissolve from the rooftops, exposing the same broken shingles, the same sagging beams, the same stains of old fires and older disappointments. There is nothing dramatic about this realization. No sudden collapse, no tragic weeping, no final breaking point. It is simply another layer of heaviness, a deepening of the gloom you have worn for so long. You look back at your life as if paging through a ledger. You recall each kiss, each ritual, each prayer mumbled over a fevered child or a weeping parent. For years you have tried to count your victories, but now you see that you have been fooling yourself. The faces you remember are all gone, either into the earth or into the slow erasure of memory. For every child you eased for a night, there were a dozen who never woke. For every parent who squeezed your hand and thanked you, there were more who only glared with hollow, silent accusation as you left. You think of the times you sat by the dying, offering not just your lips, but your presence, your attention, your time. You recall the small, hopeless gifts pressed into your hand, cracked copper coins, withered apples, a strip of clean linen. These tokens have all vanished, spent or lost or traded for something even less permanent. Nothing has lasted. Not the comfort you gave, not the gratitude you sometimes received, not the reputation you built. Even your own sense of purpose is slipping away, another casualty of the endless, unwinnable struggle. You begin to see yourself as the villagers must see you, not as a savior, but as an unpleasant necessity, a function of despair. You were a hope to them only when hope was already dead, a ritual they clung to out of habit or terror or superstition. When the worst came, they blamed you in silence, or turned away, or simply forgot you as they buried their dead and returned to their routines. Your legacy is not healing, but the memory of trying and failing, again and again. The worst part is not the bitterness, it is the emptiness. You feel it in the mornings when you rise from your pallet, muscles aching, lips cracked and numb, wondering why you bother to begin again. You feel it in the afternoons as you trudge through mud and filth to another home where another body waits, and you know before you enter that there is nothing you can do that will make any real difference. You feel it at night, in the long, cold hours when your housemates snore or cough, or mutter in their sleep, and you lie awake counting the days you have lost. You try sometimes to remind yourself that you are not alone in this. The whole village is caught in the same cycle, sowing, reaping, losing, waiting. No one escapes the slow, grinding machinery of survival. But this thought brings no comfort. If anything, it sharpens your sense of futility. You are not unique. Your misery is not special. You are only another part of the meaningless churn. There are moments when you wish you could rage against it, break something, scream at the sky, demand an answer or at least an explanation. But you are too tired, too practiced in endurance, too worn down by the constant erosion of hope. Anger is a luxury for those who still believe their pain matters. You no longer believe even that. There are other, darker thoughts that come in the quietest hours. You wonder, if you were to vanish, how long before you were missed? Would the villagers adapt, find a new ritual, invent a new healer to fill your place? Would your housemates notice, or would they simply divide your blanket and your rations and continue on? You suspect it would not take long. You suspect the world would swallow your absence as easily as it has swallowed every effort you have ever made. Yet you continue. This, too, feels meaningless, but you do it anyway. You get up, you walk the streets, you visit the dying, you perform the ritual that has lost all its power for you. Not because you believe it matters, not because you hope for change, but because habit is stronger than despair. You have become a machine, moving through a set of motions so old that you no longer remember when you began or why. Sometimes, in a flash of bitter irony, you think of yourself as the village's last superstition. They no longer believe in miracles, but they still believe in you, or at least in what you represent, a final, futile gesture against the void. You are a symbol of meaning in a world that offers none, and you play your part because even a symbol must move, must speak, must touch, must try. You realize, in the end, that meaning itself is a story you once believed, as a child believes in the sun rising for their benefit or the rain falling for their thirst. Now you know better. The sun rises for no one, the rain falls, and the village is washed clean and then dirty again, and you are there to witness it, to mark the passage of another pointless day. This is the truth you carry. Everything you have done has changed nothing, and you continue anyway. Tomorrow, as always, you will rise and do it all again. The thought surfaces slowly, reluctant and unfamiliar, like a weed pushing through hard packed earth. For so long, you have existed only in service to others, their illnesses, their grief, their endless need for comfort. You have been so consumed by the ritual, by the daily parade of suffering and expectation, that the idea of caring for yourself feels both shameful and absurd. What would it even look like in a world where survival itself is a collective, desperate act? But lately, in the numb hours between darkness and dawn, you have found yourself wondering what might happen if you stepped away. If just for a day, You refused to perform the role carved out for you by superstition and desperation. You imagined sitting quietly, alone, letting your lips heal, letting your body rest. You imagine not answering every cry for help, not feeling responsible for each fever that burns or every breath that fails. It is a dangerous thought, selfish, the village would say, but perhaps not as selfish as you once believed. There is nothing heroic in your exhaustion, nothing noble in being used up and discarded. For years, you mistook your suffering for sacrifice. You thought that by giving everything, you were achieving something, perhaps even redemption. But now, after countless failures, you see that an empty vessel cannot pour. Your hands shake, your mind wanders, your body rebels with fever and aches. The very people who depend on you begin to look at you with suspicion, sensing that something vital is slipping away. You realize they need you strong, or at least functioning, and that paradoxically requires boundaries. One morning, after a particularly violent bout of coughing, you sit on the edge of your pallet, shivering and weak, and ask yourself what you would do if you truly wished to survive. The answer is disarmingly simple. You would rest. You would eat if there were food. You would refuse to kiss the dying just for a day, just to let your lips and throat recover. You would stop chasing miracles and let the burden slide from your shoulders, if only briefly. Of course, nothing in your world allows for such luxury. The village is a machine that grinds every spare bit of life into the mud, and no one is truly permitted to step aside. Yet the idea haunts you now, whispering at the edges of your exhaustion. You start to notice the tiny acts of self preservation around you. The old woman who hoards her best rags for winter, the coughing man who keeps a sliver of onion for himself before sharing the rest, the girl who pretends to be asleep rather than listen to the moans of her companions. Everyone has a secret, hidden way of saving themselves, even if it is only a moment of stolen warmth or a crumb tucked away for later. You realize, with a pang that is equal parts envy and relief, that you are not alone in wanting to survive. No one here expects a martyr. The village would gladly take from you all you can give, but it would not thank you for dying in the process. In fact, the more you give, the less you seem to matter. Only in absence, only in withdrawal, might your value be recognized. So you begin, cautiously, to draw lines. The next time someone comes banging on your door before dawn, begging you to tend to a feverish child, you force yourself to wait just a minute longer before you answer. When a neighbor asks you to bless their home against imagined spirits, you mutter a quick word from your palate rather than walk through the cold. At first, the guilt is overwhelming. Each refusal feels like a betrayal, an invitation to catastrophe. But the world does not end. The sun rises, the children cough, the mud deepens, and somehow life stumbles forward. Slowly, you start to reclaim small pieces of yourself. You let yourself sit in the patch of weak sunlight that falls through the window. You listen to the wind, to the scrape of branches against the roof, to your own breath. You allow yourself to feel hunger, to feel pain, to acknowledge without shame that your body is failing and needs tending. You scavenge for food a little more selfishly. You keep your scraps of blanket close. The villagers notice, of course. Some are affronted, their faces pinched with indignation at your new reluctance. Others are simply puzzled, unable to reconcile this new boundary with the self sacrificing healer they have come to expect. A few, the ones who have suffered the most, simply nod, recognizing the necessity. They too have learned that you cannot pour from an empty cup. There is no sudden transformation. You do not become whole overnight, but you begin to sense, beneath all the numbness, a flicker of something that might one day be called will. You have not saved anyone, not truly, but perhaps you can still save a part of yourself, enough to survive the next day, the next ritual, the next long night. You come to understand, at last, that there is no virtue in erasing yourself for others. The world will always take what you offer, and more besides. Only by tending to the fragile thing that is your own soul can you hope to offer anything real to those around you. Even in this bleak, unchanging village, even among the mud and sorrow and hunger, this simple truth endures. To give in endlessly is to be lost. To save yourself is the first act of true mercy. So, when morning comes, you rise a little slower. You let yourself breathe. You step outside, not as a sacrifice, but as a person with boundaries, with hunger, with hope, no matter how dim. The work is still there, the world unchanged, but you are, if only by a fraction, a little more present, a little more alive. And for the first time in longer than you can remember, you feel, deep beneath the layers of weariness, a faint, stubborn sense that you have something left to offer, if only to yourself. You see it everywhere you look, and smell it even when you close your eyes. It is in the walls, which swell with damp and cradle small colonies of mold in their splintered seams. It is in the straw of your palate, which grows heavier, denser, more sour with each night you try to sleep away your aches. You hear it in the coughs that seem to multiply as the air cools, in the soft, wet sounds of skin breaking open, of teeth loosening, of bodies giving up their slow, stubborn grip on life. Outside, the world decays with a kind of casual persistence. The mud deepens, clinging to everything, refusing to dry. The trees lean further each year, branches cracking off in the wind and left to rot where they fall. Fences collapse. Thatched roofs slide inward under the weight of old snow and new rain. No one repairs things anymore, only patches, improvises, does just enough to keep the wind out for one more night. Decay is never beaten, only briefly delayed. You have come to know rot not just as an inconvenience, but as a law of the world. It is not only a physical condition, it is spiritual, emotional, communal. Families rot from within. Marriages turn brittle, then collapse. Friendships dissolve into suspicion, envy, or silent mutual neglect. The very habits that keep you all alive are laced with the stench of resignation. The villagers do not even seem angry at the world for this. It is simply how things are and have always been. You see it, especially in the children. They move slower each year, their games growing less frequent and less imaginative. Their laughter is rare, half hearted, fading before it can become a true shout. You watch as hunger whittles away their bodies, as boredom hollows out their eyes. Some disappear altogether, taken by fever, by accident, or by families who leave in the night, seeking something, anything, less rotten. Few return. Even your housemates are not immune. The old woman who once filled the room with muttering is now silent for days at a time. When she does speak, her words are fragments, unconnected to any past or future. The two coughing men shrink into themselves, bones poking through their skin, coughs now weaker but more final. The silent girl, who once rocked in the dark, now barely stirs at all. Sometimes you wonder if she will vanish one night, rot claiming her so thoroughly that even memory cannot hold her. But the rot is not only out there, in other people, in other houses. You feel it within yourself as well, creeping inward, gnawing at resolve and body alike. Your lips remain chapped and sore, sometimes bleeding. Your joints ache with each movement. Your cough never quite leaves. Your appetite, when it visits, brings only nausea. Even your senses betray you. Food tastes like wood. Water tastes like earth. Warmth feels like little more than a memory of sun. You sense the rot in your mind as well. Thoughts move slowly, losing their edge. Names slip away. Days blend together, marked only by the repetition of misery. There are moments, more frequent now, when you forget what you meant to do, or find yourself standing in a doorway with no memory of how you arrived. The world around you softens, not with comfort, but with the dullness of decay. There is little dignity in this kind of living. No one pretends anymore. There are no stories about fresh starts, no sudden reversals of fortune, no new healers with mysterious remedies. The best you can hope for is a clean bandage, a dry roof for a few nights, a quiet meal without too much arguing. Every small kindness is a surprise, a brief reprieve from the slow collapse. Sometimes, out of habit or desperation, the villagers gather at the well in the square by the church. The conversations are as thin as soup. Who is sick now? Who is gone? Whose roof leaked worst in the last storm? The same stories, told over and over, rotting in the telling. The priest still tries to offer words of comfort, but even he cannot hide the cracks in his voice, the defeat in his eyes. You watch all this and cannot help but feel complicit. Your role has always been to push back against the rot, one kiss, one gesture, one act of witness at a time. But now it is clear you have only ever delayed the inevitable. You are not a healer, not anymore. You are at best a caretaker of rot, someone who slows the spread but cannot change the ending. You wonder, as you walk through the thickening fog, what will be left in a year, or 5, or 10. Will the village still stand, or will it sink into the mud, its bones reclaimed by the earth? Will the people scatter, their names lost even to memory? Will anyone remember you, the master of kisses, the one who stayed as everything else was rotting? Or will your name, too, be eaten away until it is as meaningless as everything else? And yet, tomorrow, you will rise. You will perform your rituals. You will walk among the sick and the fading, offering the same small comfort, the same tired hope. Not because you expect to win, not because you believe in resurrection, but because even in a world of rot, someone must bear witness to the last stubborn traces of life. It is not heroism. It is not even survival. It is only endurance, the slow refusal to let the world rot unobserved, unchallenged, unremembered. It is not a grand decision. There is no dramatic event to spark it, no accusation from the villagers, no final act of betrayal, no personal disaster worse than any that came before. The rot and gloom have simply reached their natural conclusion within you. The world that was always shrinking around you has become so tight that it now feels like a shroud. You do not announce your plan. There is nothing theatrical about your departure. In fact, you are not entirely sure, even as you rise before dawn and quietly gather your thin possessions, whether you are leaving forever or simply walking until your legs give out. There is nothing to pack. Your clothes are threadbare, your shoes patched and leaky. You take your blanket, a crust of bread if you can find it, and a cup you once received as a thank you, a rare object in your life, and already dented from too many careless hands. The house is silent. Your housemates do not stir. If they wake to find your pallet empty, perhaps they will mourn your absence for a day, or perhaps only long enough to devour your share of stale food and threadbare warmth. You hope, for their sakes, that they do not linger over your memory. The dead are burdens enough. They do not need another ghost clinging to their dark, cold nights. You slip into the village before the sun has properly risen. The streets are empty, save for a stray dog nosing at the refuse heap and a woman drawing water, shoulders hunched against the wind. She sees you and hesitates, curiosity or suspicion flickering in her eyes. You keep your gaze low. You do not want to speak, do not want a farewell. The village has already said its piece, wordlessly, day after day, year after year. You walk the main road with no clear destination. Behind you, the familiar outlines of home dissolve into gray mist. Ahead, the path is uncertain, rutted, broken, sometimes vanishing altogether as it curves through fields more brown than green. The land is as tired as you are, fences fallen, ditches full of stagnant water, distant stands of trees blackened by old lightning strikes and slow disease. The journey itself feels unreal. You have not left the village in years, except for the rare errand or to attend a funeral in the next hamlet. You realize, after the first hour, that the world outside your old, rotting walls is not better, only less familiar in its misery. Here, too, that the people are stooped, suspicious, their homes patched and battered by too many seasons. The air is the same, a little sharper, perhaps, or filled with new, strange scents, but it does not revive you. As the hours pass, you are struck by the silence. In the village, there was always a background hum, arguments, chores, coughing, the restless noise of too many lives pressed together. Out here, there is only wind and the distant caw of crows. You should feel free, or at least relieved, but instead you feel hollow. The world is wide, yes, but it is also empty. Your absence changes nothing. You pass a field where a few children stand motionless, watching a scarecrow rot. They do not call out. They do not run to meet you. You keep walking, your feet numb, the landscape blurring past. The monotony of survival is everywhere. You realize, in a way both sad and comical, that you have not escaped the village at all. You have only carried its gloom with you, a shadow stitched to your heels. Your mind wanders as you walk. You remember all the faces you have kissed, so many of them nameless now, their stories forgotten. You wonder what became of those who lingered on, whether any of them found peace, or if their lives simply dwindled to quieter suffering. The rituals, the words, the tokens of gratitude or resentment all seem weightless now, dust blowing across a barren field. You rest beneath a crooked tree as the sun struggles to rise behind clouds. You eat your bread, and it tastes no different than it did in your cold room. For the first time in years, no one expects anything from you. You are no longer the master of kisses. You are only a tired traveler, nameless and irrelevant, as forgettable as any other wanderer whose path dissolves into mud. As night approaches, you realize there is nowhere in particular you wish to reach. The road will not deliver you to a new life. The world will not rise up to meet you. You could continue forever and find only more of the same, more rot, more hunger, more worn out souls trying to last until morning. And yet, in this emptiness, there is a strange, bitter clarity. The rituals, the village, your own suffering, none of it ever made sense. But now it does not have to. You are not leaving to find hope. You are leaving because staying is impossible, because all things, souls, bodies, villages, eventually move or decay, or both. You lie down beneath the stars, wrapped in your threadbare blanket, and listen to the slow heartbeat of a world that is indifferent to your absence. For a moment, you imagine you can feel the earth itself turning, all its little cruelties and brief mercies grinding on without you. You do not know if you will wake or what you will do if you do. But for the first time in years, you are neither expected nor needed, and the silence that brings is, if not peace, at least a kind of relief. But perhaps that is not quite right. Did you ever truly leave? Or did leaving simply mean carrying the same emptiness to a different place, a different field, a different patch of sky where even the stars blink with indifference? The line between staying and going blurs as the world inside you and the world outside collapse into one another. It does not matter now whether you are beneath your roof or under the slow, sullen drift of clouds. In the end, the walls are within you, and they follow you everywhere. The silence settles around you, thick as wool, heavy as mud. You listen to the creak of imaginary floorboards, the remembered coughs and mutters of your housemates, the faint scrape of rats behind the wainscot. Ghosts now, all of them, voices trapped somewhere in the hollows of your mind. You lie still and imagine the shape of your old room, the low ceiling darkened by years of smoke, the window cracked and smeared, the cold wind curling through the gaps, always present, always a reminder that you are never truly safe from the world. Outside, the stench is still there too. It is the same cocktail of sweat, rot, and longing, the aroma of humanity reduced to its most basic struggle. Sometimes, for a moment, it seems to fade, replaced by the memory of fresh bread, or green grass, or a childhood breeze that never quite existed. But always, inevitably, it returns. The stink of endurance, the proof of your body's stubborn refusal to give up. You think about all the lives you touched, the lips you kissed, the feverish brows you pressed your mouth to, the trembling hands that clung to you for mercy or meaning. Where are they now? Most are gone, folded into the endless earth, or scattered to the wind by time. Perhaps a few remember you, but even those memories will fade, worn smooth by years and hunger and the thousand small cruelties that make up a life. The village continues without you, its rhythms unchanged. People die, and new ones are born, and the rituals go on. Perhaps another master of kisses has emerged, or perhaps the role is quietly forgotten, replaced by some new superstition, some new habit of comfort in a comfortless world. You do not miss your own absence. You do not imagine yourself a hero or a martyr or even a failure. You are simply a page in a book no one will ever finish reading. You do not know what to do with yourself now that you are no longer needed. The days stretch and shrink without pattern. You eat when you can, sleep when you must, drift between waking and dreaming with little distinction. Sometimes you remember the rituals of your old life and start to perform them, mumbling a prayer, reaching out for a hand that is not there, bracing yourself for the sickly warmth of another's skin. The motions are automatic, the meaning gone. You perform them anyway. Habit, it turns out, is as indestructible as hunger. You are not alone, not really. The emptiness is a companion, the silence a kind of friend. You speak to the air and answer yourself. You trace the patterns of cracks in the wall, whether in memory or reality, you cannot say. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the world going on without you. The scrape of a chair, the call of a crow, the distant rush of a river swollen by rain. Life moves, indifferent, tireless, swallowing its own dead and spitting out its own new beginnings. Sometimes you wonder if you could save yourself now, if you even want to. What would it mean, after all this time, to be healed? What would you do with hope if you found it? but pace the same 4 steps and wait for it to wear out. You have become the room, the walls, the stench, the ritual that never ends. You close your eyes and wait, perhaps for sleep, perhaps for the end, perhaps just for another day to begin, so you can mark it and let it go. You no longer dream of miracles or even of escape. You dream only of endurance, a dull, steady persistence that is neither noble nor tragic, but simply what is left when everything else has gone. The world, you realize, does not care if you are healed or broken, lost or found. The world goes on, as indifferent as always. The village, the people, the mud, the seasons, they continue with or without you. And you, surrounded by the same walls, the same filth, the same stench, are left with nothing but the relentless, slow passing of time. You are the witness, you are the residue, you are the habit that remains after all meaning has been scraped away. And in this emptiness, you persist, not for hope, not for love, not even for memory, but simply because you have not yet stopped.